Welcome to Love and Us, where small moments become forever. If this story touches your heart, please like, share, and subscribe for more cinematic tales of love, destiny, and the quiet kind of magic that lives in all of us. Now, close your eyes, listen to the rain, and let me tell you the story of October's last kiss. Willowridge had always been a place that held on to its ghosts, not the kind that scared you, but the kind that whispered through the trees when autumn came around. Every October, the town looked like something from a dream. Pumpkins glowed on porches, maple leaves burned gold in the lamplight, and the air smelled of rain, cinnamon, and the faintest touch of nostalgia. And at the edge of town, sitting on the hill above Rosewell Lane, stood Maple Hollow Inn, an old Victorian house that had once been full of laughter and music. Now, it stood quiet. That night, as the first autumn storm rolled in, Emma Carver came home. She hadn't planned to return. Not after leaving Willowridge 5 years ago, promising herself she'd never look back. But grief had a way of changing plans. Her mother's passing left the world hollow, and when she got the letter about the inn being hers now, something deep in her told her she needed to see it one last time. The wind pushed against her umbrella as she climbed the front steps. The porch groaned beneath her boots. The brass key, her mother's old one, stuck in the lock before finally turning with a sigh. The door opened, and a rush of cool air met her, scented with dust, rain, and something sweet. Cinnamon. She smiled faintly. Still smells like you, Mom. Inside, everything was just as she remembered. The old piano by the window, the crooked picture frame, the stack of guest books behind the counter. But it all felt quieter, as if the house was waiting for her to say something first. The storm thickened outside. The power flickered once, twice, then steadied. Emma found a candle and struck a match. The flame jumped to life, throwing shadows across the old wallpaper. She exhaled slowly. "Okay," she whispered to the empty house. "Just one night. Then I'll decide what to do." And then, a knock. It startled her. 3 soft raps against the door, steady and polite. She hesitated, unsure if she'd imagined it. Then it came again, louder this time. Emma opened the door. A man stood there, tall and lean, holding an umbrella that dripped rain onto the porch. His eyes were a calm shade of grey, and he wore that kind of uncertain smile people give when they know they're intruding. "Sorry to bother you," he said. His voice was low, smooth, the kind that made you want to listen. "You wouldn't happen to have a room, would you?" "I was driving through, and this storm came out of nowhere." Emma blinked. "A room?" "This place hasn't been an inn for years." He looked up at the faded sign swinging in the wind. "Shame. It looks like the kind of place that remembers things." She wasn't sure why she said it. Maybe it was loneliness or the sound of the rain, but the words came out before she could stop them. "I suppose I could make an exception. For tonight." His smile warmed. "Then I'm the luckiest man in Willowridge." He introduced himself as Luke Mercer, a traveling photographer documenting the forgotten corners of America. As she led him upstairs to the last room on the right, her mother's favorite, he paused in the hallway. "You live here alone?" "Not really," she said. "The house keeps me company." Luke chuckled softly. "Then I'll try not to disturb either of you." Later, over tea in the parlor, they talked while the rain whispered against the windows. Luke told her he'd been following the changing leaves across the northeast, photographing small towns before winter erased their colors. "I'm not sure what I'm looking for," he said, stirring his tea. "But every October, I end up in places like this. Places that feel like memories instead of towns." Emma smiled faintly. "Willowridge will do that to you." He looked around, his eyes catching the flicker of candlelight on the piano keys. "Did you grow up here?" She nodded. "My mom ran this place. It used to be alive, full of guests and laughter. Every Halloween, she'd host a dance. Pumpkin lanterns, cider, a record player that never quite stayed in tune." Luke's expression softened. "Sounds like magic." "It was," Emma said quietly, "until it wasn't." For a moment, they sat in silence, the fire crackling softly. Then Luke reached into his bag and pulled out a photograph. The edges were yellowed, the ink faded. He slid it across the table toward her. "This is why I stopped here," he said. Emma picked it up, and her breath caught. It was the inn. Maple Hollow. Decades ago. Lanterns glowing on the porch. People dancing beneath the trees. And in the center of the photo, her mother. Younger, smiling, wearing a red dress she recognized from an old closet upstairs. Emma's voice trembled. "Where did you get this?" Luke hesitated. "A flea market in Portland, last year. I don't know why, but I couldn't leave it behind. I've carried it with me ever since." She turned it over. On the back, in her mother's handwriting, were the words, "October's Last Kiss, 1987. Emma stared at it for a long time, her heart thudding softly. Luke's gaze was gentle. "When I saw this house tonight, I knew I'd been here before. I just didn't know when." That night, after Luke went upstairs, Emma stayed awake by the fire. The photograph sat on the table beside her, glinting in the candlelight. Outside, the wind pushed against the windows. The piano creaked. And then, soft as breath, she heard it. "Emma." The whisper came from the parlor. She froze. "Emma." She turned toward the sound, and saw her mother's favorite candle flicker. The flame stretched, bent, and then steadied. Emma's throat tightened. "Mom." The air shifted, warm, sweet, full of cinnamon. And in the mirror above the piano, just for an instant, she saw her reflection, standing beside another woman, smiling. Then the image vanished. Upstairs, Luke couldn't sleep. He sat by the window, staring out at the rain-slicked road. The town below shimmered beneath street lamps, quiet and half asleep. He reached for the old photograph again. His thumb brushed the faded ink. "October's Last Kiss," he whispered. And as he said it, the room filled with the faintest scent of cinnamon and roses. He looked up and swore he saw movement in the hallway mirror. A woman in red, smiling, then gone. The clock downstairs struck midnight. Somewhere, faint and delicate, the piano began to play. The piano music drifted softly through the hall, like a heartbeat remembered from another time. Emma froze halfway up the stairs. The melody was unmistakable, her mother's song. But no one had touched that piano in years. When she reached the parlor, the room was empty. The piano played on its own. Her breath caught in her throat. "Mom." The melody faltered, then stopped, like a sigh. Only the rain remained. Luke appeared at the top of the stairs. "Emma." "What's wrong?" She turned, her eyes wide. "You heard it too." "I heard something," he said, stepping closer. "Music." She nodded, voice barely a whisper. "She used to play that song every Halloween, I think." Luke reached the bottom of the stairs. "You think she's still here?" Emma hesitated. "I don't know. Maybe part of her. Maybe part of me." He looked at her for a long moment, his expression soft. Sometimes love doesn't know how to stop existing. The next morning, the storm broke. Sunlight poured through the curtains, catching in the dust motes that danced across the old parlor. Luke was already awake, coffee in hand, his camera slung over his shoulder. "I hope you don't mind," he said. "I couldn't resist taking a few shots. The light in here, it's like gold." Emma smiled faintly. "My mom would have liked that. She used to say the house only felt alive when someone noticed the little things." He studied her face. "You miss her?" "Every day." He hesitated, then held out the photograph again. "Maybe that's why I found this. Maybe she wanted me to." She looked down at it. "Why you, though?" Luke opened his mouth, then stopped. "I don't know, but I can't shake the feeling that I've been here before, that I knew her." Emma frowned. She would have been about my age in that photo. He nodded slowly. "Maybe it's nothing. Maybe I just want it to mean something." But as sunlight hit the photograph, Emma saw it, faint, hidden beneath the fading ink. A smudge of handwriting she hadn't noticed before. 2 words, "Find her." They spent the afternoon in the attic, going through old boxes. Dust floated like snow in the beams of light from the single window. Emma found a chest of letters tied with ribbon, her mother's handwriting again. Some were addressed to friends, others to herself. And one, tucked at the very bottom, was different. The envelope was never sealed. And inside, written in ink that had barely faded, was a single page. If you ever find your way back to me, I'll be waiting under the lanterns. October always brings you home. Emma stared at the letter, her hand trembling. Luke leaned closer. May I? She handed it to him. His eyes moved over the words, and for a second, his face went pale. This handwriting. It looks like mine. Emma blinked. That's not possible. I know. He turned the letter over, showing her the faint, faded signature at the bottom. But look. And there it was. The same name, barely legible beneath time and smudged ink. Luke. The room went still. Neither spoke. The world outside had quieted, the wind hushed, as if the house itself was listening. Finally, Emma said softly, maybe that's why you came back. Luke looked at her. Came back. She nodded slowly. Every October, my mom said the veil between worlds was thinner, not just between life and death, but between what was and what could have been. He looked down at his hands. So you think I'm, what? Some kind of ghost? She smiled gently. I think you're what love remembers. That night was Halloween. Willowridge came alive with laughter, candlelight, and the rustle of costumes through the streets. Emma and Luke hung lanterns on the porch, the same way her mother used to. The house glowed again, warm and golden, as if the past had been waiting for this exact moment. Luke turned on the old record player, and a soft melody filled the air, jazz, faintly crackling but beautiful. Emma laughed. You found it. It was sitting under the piano, he said, smiling. I think it wanted to be played. As the record spun, Emma felt something shift in the room, a lightness, a warmth, like invisible hands brushing over her shoulders. She looked toward the mirror by the stairs, and there she was, her mother, smiling, glowing softly, her red dress flickering in the candlelight. Emma froze, tears welling in her eyes. Mom. Her mother's voice was calm, gentle. You did it, sweetheart. You brought him back. Emma shook her head. How? Why him? Her mother looked at Luke with a kind of fondness that felt older than time. He was here, once. Long ago. You were too young to remember. Luke stepped forward, his voice trembling. I tried to save you. The fire, the night of the last dance. I didn't make it out. Emma gasped softly. You. Her mother smiled sadly. Love doesn't always end when life does. Some promises just take longer to keep. Luke's eyes shone. All this time. Her mother nodded. You found her. That's all that mattered. Then she turned to Emma. The past is done, my love. Let it rest and live. The wind stirred gently through the room, making the candles dance. And then, she was gone. For a long moment, they stood in silence. The only sound was the faint crackle of the record. Emma wiped her tears, laughing softly through them. She always did make an exit. Luke smiled. At least this time, it's a happy one. She looked up at him. You're still here. He nodded. I think I am. Maybe that's the point. When the record ended, they went outside. The rain had stopped. The moon glowed full above the trees, and the lantern swayed gently in the breeze. The whole town seemed to shimmer, caught between memory and now. Luke reached for her hand. You know what she said in that letter? Under the lanterns. Emma nodded. I remember. He smiled softly. Then dance with me. She laughed. You're serious? Completely. He took her hand, and they danced, slow, quiet, surrounded by candlelight and the whisper of leaves. For a moment, it felt like the world had stopped spinning. Just the two of them, breathing in rhythm with the night. When he kissed her, it wasn't desperate or sudden. It was like finishing a sentence that had been waiting 30 years to end. warm, gentle, familiar. October's last kiss. By morning, the sky was pale blue, streaked with silver clouds. The inn looked brighter somehow, lighter, as if it had finally exhaled. Emma brewed coffee while Luke sorted through his photos. One of them caught her eye, a candid shot from the night before. They stood under the lanterns, holding each other. And behind them, faint but clear, her mother smiled through the glow. Emma pressed a hand to her chest. She's really gone. Luke nodded. Maybe not gone. Maybe just resting. She looked out the window, the leaves swirling across the hill. What happens now? Luke smiled. We rebuild. Together. Maybe reopen the inn. She laughed softly. Maple Hollow, for second chances. Exactly. That evening, as the sun dipped low, Emma hung one last lantern on the porch. Its light flickered in the wind, steady and golden. She whispered into the dusk, "Thank you." From somewhere deep in the house, faint and gentle, came the soft sound of a piano key. One note, warm and full of love. Luke stepped beside her, his arm brushing hers. "Did you hear that?" She smiled, eyes glistening. "Yeah, I think she approves." They stood there, watching the lanterns sway against the twilight sky. Below them, Willowridge glowed with autumn's fading light, a town caught between memory and tomorrow. And for the first time in a long time, Emma didn't feel like she was standing in the past. She was home. If this story warmed your heart tonight, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Love and Us, where every story reminds us that love, in all its forms, never truly fades.